The planet Haven 7 was a quiet world. Green fields stretched across the land like a soft blanket. Small houses dotted the hills. Rivers ran clean and slow through the valleys. It was a simple place, far from the noise of Earth and the great cities of the human colonies. About 3,000 people lived here. Most of them were farmers. Some were scientists who studied plants and soil. They had come here to build a peaceful life. Among these people lived a little girl named Yuna. She was 7 years old. Her hair was black and cut short. Her eyes were bright and full of wonder. She loved to run through the fields and chase butterflies. She loved to help her mother plant seeds in the garden. She was the kind of child who smiled at everyone and feared nothing. Yuna's father was a man named Teho. He was the chief engineer of the colony. He fixed the machines that pumped water. He repaired the generators that gave power to the homes. He was a tall man with strong hands and a gentle heart. He worked hard every day so that his family could live well. Yuna's mother was named Nari. She was a botanist. She studied plants and helped the farmers grow better crops. She had a calm voice and a warm smile. Every evening, she would sit with Yuna and tell her stories about Earth, stories about mountains and oceans, stories about animals that Yuna had never seen. Life on Haven 7 was good, but it did not stay that way. One day, ships appeared in the sky. They were not human ships. They were massive vessels that blocked out the sun. They belonged to the Galactic Sovereignty Council. The Council was a group of alien races that controlled many parts of the galaxy. They said they were coming to protect the colony. They said humans needed their guidance. But everyone knew the truth. The Council wanted control. The ships landed near the colony. Soldiers marched out. They were Threll. Tall creatures with hard shells like insects. Their eyes were cold and black. Their arms ended in sharp, armored points. They moved with pride and looked at the humans like they were looking at dirt. Leading them was Commander Velith. She was a female Threll, taller than the others. Her shell was dark blue, almost black. She wore medals on her chest. She walked like she owned the world, and in her mind, she did. Velith hated humans. She called them vermin. She called them animals from a death world. To her, they were nothing. The Threll set up a base near the colony. They made rules. No human could enter certain areas. No human could speak against the council. The people of Haven 7 had no choice. They obeyed. They kept their heads down. They waited and hoped that things would get better. But things did not get better. One afternoon, Yuna was playing near her house. She had a small pet. It was a little creature with soft fur. It had escaped from its cage and was running toward the fields. Yuna laughed and chased after it. She did not notice where she was going. She did not see the signs. She ran and ran until she was inside the restricted zone. A Threll soldier saw her. He shouted in his alien language. Yuna stopped. She was scared. She did not understand what he was saying. She held her pet close to her chest and looked around for her parents. Then Commander Velith appeared. She walked toward the little girl with slow, heavy steps. Her black eyes stared down at Yuna. The child looked up at her. She did not know what to do. She did not know the Threll customs. She did not know that she was supposed to kneel. Velith spoke. Her voice was sharp and cold. She said words that Yuna could not understand. When the girl did not move, Velith's eyes narrowed. She raised her armored arm. Why? Yuna tried to say something. She tried to say she was sorry. But before she could speak, Velith struck her. The blow hit the side of Yuna's head. It was hard, too hard. The little girl flew through the air and hit the ground. She did not move. Blood began to pool around her head. Her small body lay still in the dirt. A colony surveillance drone was flying nearby. It had been recording everything. It captured the moment Velith struck the child. It captured the way Yuna's body fell. It captured the cold look on Velith's face as she turned and walked away. The soldiers carried Yuna to the colony's medical center. The doctors worked fast. They did everything they could. But the damage was severe. Her skull was fractured. Her brain was swelling. They put her in a special machine to keep her alive. She fell into a deep sleep. Akoma.te-ho and Nari rushed to the medical center. When they saw their daughter lying there, pale and broken, Nari collapsed to her knees. Teo held her. His hands were shaking. His eyes were wet. He had never felt such pain in his life. Outside, the people of the colony gathered. They had seen the footage. It spread through the network like fire. Every screen showed the same thing. A little girl. An alien commander. A brutal strike. The faces of the colonists changed. Fear turned to anger. Silence turned to whispers. Within hours, the footage left Haven 7. It traveled through space. It reached other human colonies. It reached stations and outposts. It reached Earth. Millions of humans watched the video. They saw a child struck down for no reason. They saw an alien monster walk away without care, and something deep inside them began to burn. The Thrall did not understand what they had done. They did not know that humans were different from other species. They did not know that on Earth there was one rule that every human followed. One rule written in blood and bone. One rule that had been true since the beginning of time: you do not touch the children. Commander Velith returned to her quarters that night. She drank her alien wine. She laughed with her officers. She did not think about the little girl she had hurt. She did not think about the parents who were crying. She thought only of her power, her glory, her victory. She had no idea that across the stars, the wolves were waking up. The message reached Earth in less than a day. It traveled through relay stations and communication networks. It passed through military channels and news broadcasts. By the time the sun rose over the great cities, every human who had a screen had seen it. The video of a little girl being struck by an alien commander played on every channel. It echoed in every home. It burned in every heart. People gathered in the streets. They held signs. They shouted. Mothers held their children close. Fathers clenched their fists. The anger was quiet at first. Then it grew. It spread like a storm across the planet. Across all the human colonies. Across every station and ship where humans lived and worked, but the loudest. Anger was not on Earth. It was aboard a warship called the Iron Wake. This ship was the flagship of the 7th Human Expeditionary Fleet, and commanding this fleet was a man named Admiral Kang De-Soo. Admiral Kang was 62 years old. His hair was gray. His face was hard and lined with scars. He had fought in the border wars when he was young. He had led men into battles that the history books still talked about. He had buried friends. He had killed enemies. He had seen the worst that the galaxy could offer. And through it all, he had learned one truth. Weakness invited death. Strength invited respect. When he saw the video of little Yuna, he did not shout. He did not cry. He watched it once. Then he watched it again. His eyes did not blink. His jaw was tight. His officers stood behind him in silence. They knew that look. It was the look of a man making a decision. The council's ambassador sent a message the next day. It was short and cold. It said that the incident on Haven 7 was a matter of discipline. It said that the child had broken the law by entering a restricted zone. It said that Commander Velith had acted within her rights. It said that the matter was closed. Admiral Kang read the message. Then he deleted it. He called his officers to the war room. They gathered around a long table made of dark metal. Maps and screens covered the walls. The air was tense. Everyone knew something was about to happen. Admiral Kang stood at the head of the table. He looked at each of his officers. Then he spoke. His voice was low and steady. He said that the council thought humans were weak. They thought humans would bow their heads and accept this insult. They thought wrong. He said that he was not going to send a fleet. He was not going to start a war. Not yet. But he was going to send a message. A message that the galaxy would never forget. He looked at one officer in particular. A woman sitting at the far end of the table. Her name was Captain Park Jinnah. She was the leader of a special unit called Reaper Company. This unit was not like other military groups. They were trained for one thing: finding targets and eliminating them. Quietly, completely, without mercy. Captain Jinnah was 35 years old. She was not tall, but she moved like a shadow. Her eyes were sharp. Her hands never shook. She had led more than 40 missions. She had never failed. Admiral Kong gave her one order: bring me her head. No fleet. No army. Just the Reapers. Make them remember what a death world breeds. Captain Jinnah stood. She saluted. Then she left the room. Within the hour, she had gathered her team. There were 4 of them. Each one was chosen for their skills. Each one was ready to die for the mission. The first was Sergeant Yoon Woojin. He was the demolitions expert. He was a big man with thick arms and a calm smile. He could build a bomb from scraps. He could blow open any door. He laughed often, but when the fighting started, his eyes turned cold. The second was Corporal Beeksora. She was the sniper. She was thin and quiet. She rarely spoke more than a few words. But her aim was perfect. She could hit a target from 2 kilometers away. She had once killed an enemy commander through a gap no wider than a finger. The third was Private First Class Imhana. She was the medic. But she was also trained in infiltration. She could slip through security systems like water through cracks. She was young, only 24, but she had already earned 3 medals. She had soft eyes, but her hands were steady as stone. The fourth was Lieutenant Go Minsu. He was the tactical commander. He planned the missions. He made the calls in the field. He was 30 years old and had been a Reaper for 8 years. He was fast, smart, and deadly. He carried a blade on his back that he called his old friend. Captain Jean briefed the team. She showed them the target. Commander Velith. She showed them where Velith was going. The Council had reassigned her to their regional flagship, a massive warship called the Sovereign Light. This ship carried over 40,000 Threll soldiers. It was one of the most protected vessels in the galaxy. The team did not flinch. They had faced worse odds before. They boarded a small stealth ship called the Silent Han. It was fast and invisible to most sensors. It could slip through enemy space without being seen. Within 12 hours, they were gone. The Iron Wake continued its patrol. Admiral Kong returned to his duties. But every night, he looked at the stars and waited. Somewhere in the darkness, the Reapers were hunting. On Haven 7, Teho sat beside his daughter's bed. He held her small hand. The machines beeped softly. Nari stood by the window, staring at the sky. She did not know that help was coming. She did not know that far away, soldiers were flying through space with one mission. But deep in her heart, she hoped. She hoped that someone would answer. She hoped that the galaxy would learn. She hoped that the creatures who hurt her child would pay. And they would. The wolves were running, and they were hungry. The Silent Han moved through space like a ghost. Its engines were quiet. Its hull absorbed sensor waves. To anyone watching, it was nothing more than empty darkness. Inside, the 5 Reapers prepared for the mission ahead. Captain Jin studied the maps. Lieutenant Minsu checked the intelligence reports. Sergeant Woojin cleaned his explosives. Corporal Sora sat in silence, her eyes closed, her mind focused. Hana organized the medical supplies and tested her infiltration gear. They traveled for 6 days. On the 7th day, they reached a neutral trading station called Port Velen. This station floated in the space between human territory and council space. It was a place where many species came to trade, gamble, and hide. It was dirty and loud. It was perfect. The Reapers landed the Silent Han in a hidden dock. They changed their clothes. They looked like cargo workers now. Simple workers with simple faces. No one looked at them twice. Captain Jinnah gave the orders. They would split up, gather information, learn everything about the Sovereign Light, find the weak points, find the way in. Minsu went to the station's bars. He bought drinks for dock workers and listened to their stories. He learned that supply ships visited the Sovereign Light every few days. He learned the schedules. He learned the codes that soar climbed to the upper levels of the station. She found a quiet spot where she could watch the ships come and go. She counted the guards. She noted the patrol patterns. She stored everything in her sharp mind. Wu Jin visited the black market. He bought small items, rare chemicals, thin wires, things that looked harmless but could become deadly in his hands. The sellers did not ask questions. They just took the money. Hana walked through the medical district. She talked to alien doctors and nurses. She learned about thrall biology, where their weak points were, how to hurt them quickly and quietly. Captain Jinnah met with an old contact, a smuggler who owed her a favor. He was a thin creature with gray skin and too many eyes. He was afraid of humans. Most aliens were, if they were smart. He gave her what she needed. Security codes for the Sovereign Light, access passes for the cargo areas, a map of the ship's lower decks. After 3 days, the team came together again. They shared what they had learned. Minzu put the pieces together. He created a plan. The Sovereign Light was hosting a banquet in 2 days, a celebration of the Council's success in controlling the human colonies. Commander Velith would be there. She was the guest of honor. She would be surrounded by soldiers and officers. She would feel safe. She would be wrong. The plan was simple, but dangerous. A supply ship was scheduled to deliver cargo to the flagship before the banquet. The Reapers would hide inside the cargo containers. Once aboard, they would move through the ship's lower decks. They would avoid patrols. They would disable sensors. They would position themselves around the banquet hall. When the moment was right, they would strike. There were many things that could go wrong. If they were found, they would be killed. There was no rescue coming, no backup. If they failed, they would die alone in enemy space. No one complained. No one hesitated. They knew the risks when they joined the Reapers. On the night before the mission, they sat together in the Silent Han. Wu Jin cooked a simple meal. Rice and meat from the station's market. It was not good food, but they ate it together. They talked about small things. Memories from home. Places they wanted to see. People they missed. Tana talked about her younger brother. He was still in school on Earth. She sent him money every month. She wanted him to become a doctor. A real doctor, not a soldier like her. Sora did not talk much, but she showed them a small photo. It was a picture of a dog. Her dog, back on her family's farm. She missed that dog more than anything. Wu Jin laughed and told a story about a mission gone wrong. A bomb that exploded too early. He had lost his eyebrows. He had to wear a mask for a month. The team laughed with him. Minsu was quiet. He looked at the map of the Sovereign Light. He was thinking about every step, every turn, every second of the mission. He would not let anything go wrong. Captain Gina watched her team. She felt proud. These were the finest soldiers she had ever known. They were not fighting for medals or glory. They were fighting for a little girl they had never met. They were fighting because it was right. The next morning, they boarded the supply ship. The cargo containers were large and cold. They climbed inside and sealed the doors. The ship lifted off and began its journey to the Sovereign Light. For hours they waited in darkness. The containers shook as the ship moved through space. They could hear the hum of the engines. They could feel the vibration of the hull. No one spoke. No one moved. Then the ship stopped. They felt it dock with something massive. The Sovereign Light. Footsteps echoed outside. Alien voices barked orders. Machines hummed as the cargo was moved. The Reapers stayed still. They breathed slowly. They waited. When the footsteps faded, Minsu opened the container. The air was cold and smelled of metal. They were in a storage room deep in the belly of the flagship. Around them, crates and boxes were stacked high. The lights were dim. They moved like shadows. One by one, they slipped out of the storage room and into the corridors. The hunt had begun. Somewhere above them, Commander Velith was preparing for her celebration. She was choosing her finest metals. She was practicing her speech. She did not know that death was walking through her ship. She did not know that the wolves had arrived, and they were very, very hungry. The corridors of the sovereign light stretched in every direction like the veins of a giant beast. The walls were smooth and gray. The lights glowed with a pale blue color. The air was cold and carried the strange smell of alien bodies. Everywhere Thrall soldiers walked in pairs. Their armored feet clicked against the floor. Their black eyes scanned everything. The Reapers moved through this maze like ghosts. They stayed in the shadows. They crawled through maintenance tunnels. They climbed ventilation shafts. When patrols passed, they pressed themselves against walls and did not breathe. They had trained for this. They had done this many times before, but never on a ship this large, never surrounded by this many enemies. Hours passed. Slowly, carefully, they made their way toward the upper decks. Minsu led the way. He had memorized the map, every turn, every room, every sensor. He counted their steps. He timed the patrols. He never made a mistake. They passed through areas where Thrall soldiers laughed and ate. They saw trophy rooms filled with items from conquered worlds, weapons, flags, pieces of armor. On one wall, there was a human helmet. It was cracked and stained with blood. The Reapers looked at it. They said nothing, but their jaws tightened. Their eyes grew colder. As night fell on the ship, the banquet began. The great hall was filled with light and noise. Hundreds of Thrall officers sat at long tables. They wore their finest uniforms. They drank from golden cups. They ate strange foods from silver plates. Music played from hidden speakers. It was a celebration of power, a celebration of victory. At the center of it all sat Commander Valet. She looked magnificent in her ceremonial armor. Her dark blue shell gleamed under the lights. Her medals covered her chest. She sat at the head table, surrounded by admirals and generals. She smiled as they praised her. She laughed as they toasted her name. She was the hero of Haven 7, the one who had taught the humans their place. She raised her cup and began to speak. Her voice echoed through the hall. She talked about duty. She talked about the greatness of the council. She talked about how the weak must bow to the strong. She talked about humans like they were insects, animals, vermin that needed to be controlled. The officers cheered. They banged their cups on the tables. They roared with approval, high above the hall. Hidden in the shadows of a ventilation shaft, Corporal Sora watched through the scope of her rifle. Her breathing was slow and steady. Her finger rested beside the trigger. Not yet. In the maintenance rooms below the hall, Sergeant Wu Jin finished planting his charges. Small bombs, carefully hidden. They would not destroy the ship. They would only kill the lights and create chaos. He checked his timer. 10 minutes. Captain Gina waited in a corridor near the hall's back entrance. She watched the guards through a tiny camera. 2 of them, large and armored. She signaled to Minsu and Hana. They nodded. The minutes crawled by. The banquet continued. More speeches. More laughter. More pride. Then the lights went out. The hall fell into complete darkness. Screams filled the air. Cups crashed to the floor. Bodies stumbled and fell. The Thrall were confused. Their eyes could see in low light, but this darkness was total. Wu Jin had made sure of that. In the chaos, Minsu and Hana dropped from the ceiling. They fell like shadows. They landed behind Velith's guards without a sound. Before the guards could react, they were dead. Quick strikes to the neck. Silent and clean. Velith stood from her chair. She could not see. She could hear movement around her. She screamed for her soldiers. She reached for her weapon. A hand grabbed her arm. It was strong. Stronger than any Thrall she had ever fought. She tried to pull away, but she could not. Another hand grabbed her other arm. She was forced to her knees. Emergency lights flickered on, red and dim. Now she could see 2 humans stood before her. A man and a woman. Their faces were calm. Their eyes were cold. Behind them, she could see more shadows moving. More humans. Her guards lay dead on the floor. She tried to speak. She demanded to know who they were. She demanded to be released. She threatened them with the wrath of the council. Hana stepped forward. She held a small device. A screen, on it played a video. The video of a little girl being struck. The video of Yuna falling to the ground. The video of blood pooling around her small head. Hana looked at Velith. Her voice was soft but sharp. She said that on Earth there was a rule. A rule older than any law. A rule written in the bones of every human. Touch our young, and we will bury your civilization. Velith's eyes went wide. For the first time in her life, she felt true fear. She had seen humans as weak, as prey. But these creatures before her were not prey. They were predators. Born on a world of crushing gravity and endless danger, shaped by millions of years of survival. They were death itself, she begged. She pleaded. She offered them anything they wanted. Wealth, power, freedom. She would do anything. Minsu drew his blade. It was long and curved. It caught the red light and gleamed like fire. He said nothing. There was nothing to say. Velith screamed. The blade fell. When the lights fully returned, the Thrall officers found the hall in ruins. Tables were overturned. Bodies lay everywhere. And at the center of it all, on the head table, was Commander Velith. Her body sat in her chair, but her head was gone. Carved into the table before her was a message. The letters were deep and jagged. Deathworld justice. The Reapers were already gone. Moving through the ship like smoke, heading back to the cargo hold. Heading back to the Silent Han, they had completed their mission. But their work was not done. There was one more message to deliver. The Silent Han slipped away from the Sovereign Light while the ship burned with chaos. Alarms screamed through every corridor. Soldiers ran in all directions. Officers shouted orders that no one followed. The great flagship that had felt so safe, so powerful, was now filled with fear. The Reapers did not look back. They sat in their small ship and flew into the darkness of space. They had what they came for. A container sat in the cargo hold. Inside it was the head of Commander Velith. Preserved, ready. For 3 days they traveled. They did not celebrate. They did not cheer. They were soldiers, and soldiers did not celebrate death. They had done what needed to be done. Nothing more. Nothing less. On the 3rd day, they received a message from Admiral Kong. He told them where to go. The Council's High Parliament was meeting aboard their greatest warship, a massive vessel called the Eternal Throne. This was where the most powerful leaders of the Council gathered: admirals, generals, governors, the rulers of 100 worlds. The Silent Han changed course. The Eternal Throne floated in the heart of Council space. It was larger than any ship the humans had ever built. It stretched for kilometers. Its weapons could destroy planets. Its shields could block any attack. Around it, hundreds of smaller warships flew in formation. It was a symbol of absolute power. Inside the Parliament chamber, the leaders argued. The news from the Sovereign Light had reached them. Commander Velith was dead. Killed by humans, on a council ship, surrounded by 40,000 soldiers. It seemed impossible. It felt like a nightmare. Some leaders demanded war. They wanted to send fleets to burn every human world. They wanted to teach these animals a lesson they would never forget. Others were afraid. They had heard stories about humans, stories about their strength, their speed, their refusal to die, stories about the death world called Earth, where every creature was a predator, where even the plants could kill. These stories now seemed too real. While they argued, a small ship appeared on their sensors. It was alone. No weapons. Just a tiny vessel flying straight toward the Eternal Throne. The council ships surrounded it. They aimed their weapons. They demanded identification. The ship broadcast a simple message. It said that they had a delivery for the Parliament, a gift from the humans of Earth. The leaders watched from the observation deck. They saw the small ship float closer. They saw it stop a few hundred meters from the Eternal Throne. Then something was released from the ship. A container. It drifted slowly through space, Toward the observation deck, soldiers brought the container inside. The Parliament gathered around it. The container was made of dark metal. On its surface was a symbol, a blue planet with green lands and white clouds, Earth. They opened the container inside. Preserved in clear fluid was the head of Commander Velith. Her black eyes were still open. Her face was frozen in fear. Even in death, she looked terrified. Attached to the container was a piece of paper. Real paper, handwritten. The council leaders had never seen anything like it. Humans still used such old ways? Such primitive things. One of the admirals read the message aloud. His voice shook as he spoke. The message was from Admiral Kong De-Su. It said that this was what happened when you touched their children. It said that humans were not subjects. They were not pets. They were the apex predators of a death world. They protected their own. It said that if one more human child was harmed, it would not be a single head that was delivered. It would be the ashes of the Council's empire. The Parliament chamber fell silent. No one moved. No one spoke. Outside, the silent Han was already gone. It had jumped into hyperspace before a single shot could be fired. The Reapers were heading home. Their mission was complete. In the days that followed, the Council did something it had never done before. It voted to withdraw from all human territories. Every ship, every soldier, every flag, they pulled back completely. They did not apologize. They did not admit fault, but they left. That was enough. The news spread across the galaxy. Other species heard what had happened. They heard about the little girl. They heard about the Reapers. They heard about the head delivered to the Parliament. And they learned a new rule. A rule that would be passed down for generations: never anger the Deathworlders. On Haven 7, the sun rose over the green fields. The Threll ships were gone. The soldiers had packed up and left in the middle of the night. The people came out of their homes and looked at the empty sky. They did not understand what had happened. They only knew that they were free. In the medical center, Taeho sat beside his daughter's bed. He had not slept in days. His eyes were red. His hands were tired. But he held Yuna's small fingers and refused to let go. Nari stood by the window. She watched the sunrise. For the first time in weeks, she felt something warm in her chest. Hope. Then she heard a sound. A small sound. A breath. She turned. Taeho was leaning forward. His eyes were wide. He was whispering his daughter's name. Yuna's eyes were open. She looked around the room. She was confused. Weak, but alive. Her lips moved. She asked for water. Nari rushed to her side. Tears streamed down her face. She held her daughter's hand and kissed her forehead. Taeho laughed. It was a strange sound, a mix of joy and relief. He called for the doctors. He shouted that his daughter was awake. The room filled with people, nurses, friends, neighbors. Everyone wanted to see the little girl who had woken up. The little girl whose pain had shaken the stars. Far away aboard the Iron Wake, Admiral Kong received a message. It was from Haven 7. It said that Yuna was awake. She would recover. She would live. The old admiral sat alone in his quarters. He read the message twice. Then he closed his eyes. For the first time in many years, he allowed himself to smile. He thought about the Reapers, about Captain Jinnah and her team. They were already on their way home. They would receive no medals, no parades. Their names would never appear in any record. But they had done something that mattered. They had protected their own. They had shown the galaxy what humans truly were. Not victims, not prey, but protectors, hunters, wolves. And the wolves would always answer when a child cried. The stars continued to burn. The galaxy continued to turn. But somewhere, in whispered conversations and secret meetings, a new phrase was born. A phrase that aliens taught their young. A phrase that would echo through time, never touch a human child. The Deathworlders will come, and they will not stop until justice is done.